A streak of golden light flashed, and Su Lei's nirvana golden body, pushed to its limits, seemed to lose its effect entirely. The once formidable golden body now appeared as fragile as tofu under the faint glimmer of that golden light. Blood spurted out, reflecting in Su Lei's wide eyes, filled with fear and disbelief. He could hardly fathom how Lin Dong had so easily shattered his nirvana golden body, which had been tempered through 8 nirvana tribulations. Yet Lin Dong paid no heed to the fear growing in Su Lei's eyes, which were now wrapped in a suffocating gray mist. Instead, Lin Dong grasped the elusive golden light into his palm, where it promptly vanished. Whoosh! The life force in Su Lei's eyes quickly faded, and the powerful primordial energy surrounding his body collapsed. His form began plummeting from the sky. Lin Dong watched Su Lei's falling corpse with a glimmer in his eyes, then reached out and caught it. In the next moment, a surge of devouring power erupted from his palm. Sizzle! Under the influence of this devouring force, faint streaks of golden light began to seep from Su Lei's body. The golden strands rushed into Lin Dong's palm and swiftly into his body. Boom! Once the final trace of golden light had been absorbed by Lin Dong, he delivered a palm strike to Su Lei's chest, sending him crashing into the forest below. As the body vanished into the sea of trees, this once infamous figure of Bloodstone territory was utterly eliminated by Lin Dong. Staring at the corpse swallowed by the forest, Lin Dong clenched his palm slightly. Typically, when a Nirvana stage expert passes the 7th Nirvana tribulation, their primordial energy begins to give rise to a trace of essence spirit. Though far from enough to fully form an essence spirit, it could still present an unpredictable risk. Lin Dong, unwilling to leave such a loose end, had decisively acted to devour any trace of essence spirit lingering within Su Lei. Moreover, while Lin Dong's dragon primordial wheel was incredibly powerful, it was forged from essence spirit energy. Each use diminished its power, and since Lin Dong was currently unable to cultivate essence spirit energy on his own, he could only resort to forcibly seizing it as he had just done. One down. Having dealt with Su Lei, Lin Dong slowly turned around to face Yao Ling and Luo Yi, both staring in shock at Su Lei's fallen body. A cold smile appeared on his face. You actually killed Su Lei? Yao Ling's face twitched and his eyes, now red with anger, still held a trace of shock. Lin Dong's strike had been so swift that even they hadn't noticed the golden wheel that pierced through Su Lei's throat. Luo Yi's expression had grown increasingly grave. Despite his calm demeanor, a flicker of unease emerged. His strength was on par with Su Lei's, and if Lin Dong could kill Su Lei, then surely he had the ability to kill him as well. This guy. Luo Yi's face twitched as he looked at the young man standing in the distance, a faint smile on his face, clutching a massive black tree in his dragon-formed arm. For reasons unknown, a deep sense of unease began to creep into his heart. He brought it on himself? Lin Dong's cold, indifferent voice sounded as he responded to Yao Ling, whose eyes were burning with fury. Lin Dong was never a soft-hearted man. If these people hadn't provoked him, he might have let them be. But now that things had escalated this far, he had no reason to hold back. His strikes were deadly when given the chance. Humph. Yao Ling's eyes grew even colder at Lin Dong's words. He glared intensely at him, then took a deep breath, and his expression gradually became calm. Yet beneath that calm exterior, Lin Dong sensed a ferocious, boiling, killing intent, like a volcano on the verge of eruption. Kid, I underestimated you from the start. That was my mistake. Otherwise, things wouldn't have gotten this far. Yao Ling's voice was chillingly calm, devoid of rage, but the poisonous malice lurking beneath made one's skin crawl. Lin Dong narrowed his eyes and gripped the ancient black tree tightly, his heart growing more alert. He could sense a dangerous power building within Yao Ling, something even he felt uneasy about. But this ends now. Yao Ling's face turned emotionless as he took a step forward. Luo Yi, seeing Yao Ling's movement, hesitated, then quickly retreated instead of advancing. The experts from the Demon Seal Legion followed suit, distancing themselves from Yao Ling. Ignoring the retreating crowd, Yao Ling's eyes remained locked on Lin Dong. A cruel smile curled on his lips as his hands came together in a rapid series of intricate, sinister seals. Buzzing sounds filled the air. As Yao Ling's hand seals accelerated, the primordial energy around him began to churn violently. A suffocating pressure slowly spread out. Lin Dong, now you'll witness the peak martial arts of the Yuan sect. The cruelty in Yao Ling's smile deepened as a chilling roar erupted from him. Cursed primordial demon body. Boom. A near-insane surge of overwhelming primordial energy exploded from Yao Ling's body. Under its influence, his muscles began to swell, and veins bulged like writhing snakes beneath his skin. Sizzle. The sound of muscles tearing echoed sharply, but Yao Ling seemed unbothered by the pain. His face twisted with cruelty, as if he could already envision ripping Lin Dong apart. As his body continued to expand, black markings began to surface all over his skin. These markings resembled ancient runes, as if they were growing out of his flesh, giving him an eerie, primal appearance. In just a few moments, Yao Ling's body had doubled in size. He now resembled a miniature giant, covered in black runes, his red eyes filled with violence and malice. Boom! With a sinister smile still on his rune-covered face, Yao Ling took a powerful step forward, and his form instantly vanished. Despite his massive size, his speed was astonishing. Lin Dong's pupils contracted sharply as Yao Ling disappeared. In a flash, he swung the immortal essence ancient tree behind him, aiming at a specific spot in the air. Boom! The air cracked, and a fist covered in black runes tore through the space, slamming into the ancient tree. The tremendous power surged violently, unleashing chaos. A hurricane of force swept through the air as Lin Dong was sent flying backward. His hand, clutching the root of the immortal essence ancient tree, trembled uncontrollably. The dragon scales on his arm flickered with azure light, dispersing the terrifying impact. After invoking the so-called cursed primordial demon body, Yao Ling's strength had clearly increased by about 30%. A power so immense that even Lin Dong was shaken. Primordial Curse Seal. Yao Ling's sneer deepened as Lin Dong was sent flying. His hands rapidly formed a strange seal, which quickly transformed into a fist imprint. With a savage punch, the imprint hurtled through the sky. Whoosh! The vast primordial energy converged violently, forming a massive fist imprint that swept through the air like a tangible force, bearing down on Lin Dong from above. Buzz. Lin Dong's expression turned grim as he gazed at the terrifying energy within the approaching fist imprint. A gray glow erupted from his brow, coalescing into thick clouds. Once again, the massive spirit of the wild beast was summoned. Slash! The wild beast's enormous tail lashed out, sending surging waves of gray light crashing against the descending fist imprint. Boom! The violent shockwaves rippled outward, forcing Lin Dong to retreat rapidly. He quickly leaped to the head of the wild beast, settling down into a cross-legged position. Biting his fingertip, blood seeped out, and with a blood-stained finger, he pressed down on the tightly closed eye of the beast. If it's a bloody battle you want, I'll give you one to the end. The crimson blood spread from the beast's eye like a web, a sinister sight. Lin Dong gazed down coldly at Yao Ling, who was cloaked in violent energy. His voice was calm, yet carried an unmistakable ruthlessness. Then, with a sharp twist of his hand, his seals changed. Spirit of the wild beast, blood sacrifice. The blood-red web expanded rapidly across the beast's massive body, casting a dark crimson glow over it like rippling waves of light. Roar! The vast beast raised its head and let out a deafening roar, its voice echoing through the heavens and earth. An ancient, primal aura radiated from its body, filling the air with a presence that seemed to hail from an untamed, primordial era. At this moment, the wild beast appeared to not only possess its terrifying form, but also a trace of divine essence. Lin Dong stood atop the beast's head, his hand resting on its cold surface. Thin lines of blood streamed from his palm, flowing rapidly into the beast's body. With each passing second, his face grew paler. The blood sacrifice technique not only required vast amounts of primordial energy, but also drained the practitioner's vital essence. After using it, Lin Dong knew he would suffer severe energy depletion, needing a long period of recovery. Yet, despite the high cost, Lin Dong had no other choice. This battle had been skewed from the start. If not for the temporary surge in power from devouring 5 Immortal Essence ancient fruits, he would have stood little chance against Yao Ling, who had already reached the 9th Nirvana stage. Now that Yao Ling was unleashing his full power, Lin Dong had no option but to fight with everything he had, knowing he might not get another chance. Huff, huff. The dark red giant beast floated in the sky, its enormous tail swaying gently, stirring up fierce winds across the heavens. Not far away, Luo Yi and several other members of the Demon Seal Legion had already withdrawn. Their expressions were grave as they watched the intense standoff in the sky. Though they were shocked that Lin Dong had lasted this long against Yao Ling, they also recognized the immense strength Lin Dong now possessed. If any of them had faced Yao Ling, they doubted they would have fared as well. No matter how strange this kid is, it ends here. One of the Demon Seal Legion experts muttered darkly, gritting his teeth. The others nodded in agreement. They knew Yao Ling's capabilities well. Even among other 9th Nirvana stage experts, few dared face him head-on when he activated the cursed primordial demon body. Lin Dong, for all his power, had only managed to reach this point through external aids. Under their watchful eyes, Yao Ling, whose body had swollen several times in size, stood with an ominous glint in his eyes. The violent energy swirling around him made him look like a bloodthirsty Azura. In front of him, Lin Dong, having completed the blood sacrifice, slowly stood atop the wild beast's head. His pale face was now filled with a cold, murderous aura. His gaze was sharp, like a blade, locked onto Yao Ling with an intensity that made the killing intent in his eyes flare. Boom. Their gazes met briefly, but no words were exchanged. The next moment, the air tore apart as Yao Ling, unable to contain his murderous intent any longer, lunged at Lin Dong. His curse-marked body shot through the sky like a deadly arrow, appearing above Lin Dong in an instant. Bang! Yao Ling's eyes gleamed with malice as he punched forward. Blood-red light instantly gathered under his fist, forming a blood-colored fist imprint that roared down toward Lin Dong like a mountain crashing from the heavens. In his current state, such a punch could easily gravely injure an expert of the 8th Nirvana stage like Luo Yi. However, Lin Dong merely raised his head, his pupils reflecting the wild and vicious energy surging toward him. Slash! A massive shadow tore through the sky, carrying the devastating force capable of shattering mountains. The enormous tail of the wild beast swung with brutal force, smashing into the blood-red fist imprint. Boom! The entire sky trembled at the moment of impact, with waves of energy rippling outward. The beast's tail was sent flying backward, and even Yao Ling was forced to take a small step back. Whoosh! Yet, just as he stepped back, Yao Ling's body tilted forward again, lunging at Lin Dong like a hunting falcon. His fists moved, sending countless blood-red fist imprints surging forth. However, these imprints did not immediately strike Lin Dong. Instead, they paused mid-air. Primordial King Fist. Yao Ling's eyes gleamed with even fiercer intent as his voice rang out in a deep growl. With his final punch, the air seemed to explode as the blood-red fist imprints condensed in mid-air. The sky full of fist imprints compressed, shrinking rapidly until only a single fist imprint the size of a palm remained. Within the crimson light of the fist imprint, a shadowy figure could be seen, standing with hands clasped behind its back. Though blurry, the figure exuded an overwhelming aura, as if it could crush the heavens with a mere gesture. It was clear that Yao Ling was using another powerful spiritual martial art. Boom! Yao Ling's eyes gleamed with cruelty as the solidified blood-red fist imprint vanished from sight, ready to strike. Lin Dong's eyes grew serious as he stared at the vanishing fist imprint. His spiritual energy swiftly spread out, and after a brief moment, his pupils suddenly contracted. Connected to him through his mind, the spirit of the wild beast abruptly turned its massive head, just in time to see the blood-red fist imprint reappear behind it, striking down with overwhelming force. Faced with the terrifying power contained in the fist imprint, The spirit of the wild beast lashed out once more with its colossal tail. However, this time, the tail was effortlessly pierced by the blood-red fist imprint. Naive fool. Yao Ling sneered, his lips curling with disdain upon seeing this. Hiss. Yet Lindong, standing atop the wild beast's head, showed no sign of panic. He took a deep breath as the seals in his sleeve quietly shifted. With the final hand seal, the massive eye of the wild beast, covered by the blood-red web, suddenly snapped open. The moment it opened, the surrounding primordial energy surged violently, like oil thrown into a roaring fire. Even the light between heaven and earth seemed to dim. This time, the beast's eye was no longer gray but a deep crimson. Within that crimson hue swirled a fierce and murderous aura, as if a blood-soaked sea of wrath had emerged. The instant the blood-red eye opened, a beam of blood-colored light shot out, streaking across the sky. As it moved, the light transformed, appearing like a smaller version of the wild beast itself. The blood light and the fist imprint streaked across the sky, colliding with a deafening crash. Boom! The entire heavens trembled as the wave of blood light expanded like a giant tidal wave, spreading out in all directions. The resulting shockwave, accompanied by a terrifying force, swept across the land, reducing nearby mountains to rubble in an instant, nearly flattening the terrain. Bang! Both Lindong and the wild beast were sent flying by the shockwave, crashing into a mountaintop and shattering its peak before coming to a halt, looking somewhat battered. Raising his head, Lindong squinted toward the front. The previous attack, had it landed directly on him, would have caused severe injury despite his sky-transforming dragon art. That guy. Lindong's sharp eyes swept the area cautiously. In the next moment, his gaze suddenly focused, and as if by instinct, he spun around. Azure light quickly gathered in his palm, forming a thick shield of dragon scales. Boom! A massive fist, covered in black curse marks, tore through the air and struck the azure-scaled shield, shattering it with a single blow. The impact then slammed into Lindong's body. The force exploded against Lindong, his face flushing with redness as he was forced back dozens of steps. He managed to suppress the sweet, metallic taste rising in his throat. After forcing Lindong back with one punch, Yao Ling revealed himself, sneering coldly at Lindong. Without giving him a moment to breathe, Yao Ling leapt forward again, landing heavily on the back of the wild beast before launching another assault. Whoosh! 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 Lindong's gaze grew icy as he watched Yao Ling approach. Stomping his foot, the blood-red scales covering the back of the wild beast suddenly bristled, gleaming with a sharp, chilling light. In the next instant, they detached from the beast's body and rained down on Yao Ling like a deadly storm. Yao Ling was startled by the sudden attack. The range of the falling scales was too vast for him to avoid, forcing him to cross his arms in front of him as a torrent of blood-red light erupted to shield his body. Sizzle! Sizzle! As the blood-red scales passed over Yao Ling's body, some were deflected, but several still pierced through his defenses, leaving deep gashes on his skin. Yao Ling finally broke free from the range of the attack. Glancing down at the bloody wounds on his body, his expression darkened. Just as his face twisted with anger, a shadow flashed before him. Lindong had appeared, his azure dragon arm glowing with azure light, and without hesitation, he drove his fist into Yao Ling's chest. Boom! The violent power exploded outward, sending Yao Ling flying through the air. Damn you! Pain radiated from Yao Ling's chest as fury surged in his eyes. Watching Lindong close in once more, his face twisted into a sneer. Rather than dodging, he threw a punch to meet Lindong's attack head-on. The fierce wind stirred by their punches whipped across the back of the wild beast. Lindong was forced back a few steps, the scales on his azure dragon arm flashing as they absorbed the tremendous force. Trying to fight me head-on? Foolish! Yao Ling shook off the remaining force with a slight tremor of his body, sneering at Lindong. Whoosh! Lindong's eyes remained cold and indifferent as he glanced at Yao Ling. Without a word, he rushed forward once more. Seeing this, Yao Ling's grin became even more ferocious. If Lin Dong relied on the spirit of the wild beast to continue entangling him, it might have taken more time to defeat him. But since Lin Dong was charging in recklessly, Yao Ling believed he was merely hastening his own death. The two figures clashed again, both radiating fierce auras. Their punches and kicks collided violently as they engaged in brutal close combat on the back of the wild beast. Boom, boom, boom. Luo Yi and the other members of the Demon Seal Legion watched in shock as the two figures exchanged blows. The dull, thudding sound of fists meeting flesh echoed through the air, making them wince. They knew that the power behind those strikes was terrifying, and no one could take such blows lightly. Blood occasionally spurted out from the point of impact between the two fighters, though it was hard to tell whose it was. But one thing was clear. Both combatants had reached the point of complete madness, their eyes red with murderous intent. The sight of such a vicious brawl made Luo Yi and the others tremble with fear, their hearts filled with a cold dread. Boom. With another brutal exchange of punches, the power between the two fighters clashed and eroded each other. The scales on Lin Dong's azure dragon arm began to crack, and the once brilliant azure light grew dim. Blood trickled from beneath the cracked scales. Lin Dong was in poor condition, his body stained with blood. Even his once majestic azure dragon arm now looked battered and worn. However, despite his dire state, the killing intent in Lin Dong's eyes only intensified. Opposite him, Yao Ling's body was also covered in bloodstains, though he was in slightly better shape. After activating the cursed primordial demon body, his physical strength had become incredibly formidable. Brat, since you're at your limit, let me finish you off. Yao Ling's face twisted with malice as he stared at the exhausted Lin Dong. His voice dripped with cruelty as he launched a fierce punch toward Lin Dong's chest. Boom. At the same time, Lin Dong also threw a punch, aiming directly for Yao Ling's chest. Seeing Lin Dong's weakened punch, Yao Ling's sneer deepened. After such a brutal battle, Lin Dong's strength had clearly diminished. His attack posed no real threat anymore. For the first time in the fight, Yao Ling let his guard down slightly. Whoosh. Though subtle, the shift in Yao Ling's demeanor did not escape Lin Dong's sharp eyes. In an instant, his pupils gleamed with a dangerous light. His fist transformed into a palm, and from the center of his palm, golden light erupted. A small, golden wheel materialized. The golden wheel was small, with 8 razor-sharp scales protruding along its edges. As they curved, they emitted a chilling, cutting aura. Faint golden dragon patterns were engraved on the surface, barely visible but radiating power. The moment the golden wheel appeared, time seemed to freeze. In that brief instant, Yao Ling's fist had already slammed into Lin Dong's chest. Lin Dong's body shuddered violently from the impact, and the intense pain radiating from his chest brought a cold, sinister smile to his face. You're finished. His whisper, like the voice of death itself, quietly slipped into Yao Ling's ears. Yao Ling's pupils shrank in horror. Suddenly, a bone-chilling cold spread across his chest, causing the hairs on his body to stand on end. Xing. Yao Ling had no time to react. The momentary relaxation of his guard had cost him everything. All he could feel was a cold object piercing through his chest and, with excruciating pain, emerging from his back. Blood spurted out as Yao Ling's pupils contracted to pinpoints. He stared at the young face in front of him, now smeared with blood and wearing a chilling smile. An icy dread filled him as if he had fallen into an abyss. He had been tricked. Lin Dong had purposely given up his advantage, luring him into close combat, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Like a predator lying in wait for its prey to make a fatal mistake, Yao Ling could feel that Lin Dong had reached his limit. If the fight had continued any longer, Lin Dong would have been unable to hold out, and Yao Ling could have slowly worn him down with his vastly superior primordial energy. But time couldn't rewind to a few minutes ago. Damn you! Yao Ling snarled, his face twisted in rage. He kicked Lin Dong's shoulder, sending him flying. At the same time, Yao Ling staggered back, clutching his chest, his face quickly turning pale. In the distance, Luo Yi and the other members of the Demon Seal Legion saw this and their faces changed drastically. They rushed forward, and several of the stronger members supported Yao Ling. When they saw the gaping wound in his chest, their eyes shrank in shock. "Kill that bastard. He's at his limit," Yao Ling roared, his face deathly pale, as he clutched his chest. Upon hearing this, a savage glint appeared in Luo Yi's eyes. He and a few other strong members of the Demon Seal Legion exchanged glances and immediately lunged toward Lin Dong, who was struggling to stay on his feet. "Kill him!" Without hesitation, they attacked, their fierce killing blows raining down on Lin Dong like a torrential storm. Lin Dong's vision blurred as he saw Luo Yi and the others charge toward him. The backlash from forcibly consuming 5 immortal essence ancient fruits had finally caught up with him, and the brutal battle with Yao Ling had drained him of all his strength. At this point, he couldn't even defend himself against a 7th Nirvana stage expert. 9th Nirvana stage experts, truly formidable, Lin Dong murmured inwardly. Just then, he felt a surge of wind strike him, sending his body flying. His internal organs convulsed violently, and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. As he tumbled through the air, Lin Dong gazed at the fierce, bloodthirsty faces of Luo Yi and the others charging toward him. He could only shake his head in resignation. A wave of dizziness swept over him, clouding his mind. "Is this where it all ends?" Lin Dong muttered to himself, but just as he whispered those words, he felt his body collide with something soft. Struggling to open his eyes, he barely made out a delicate face with large, red eyes staring down at him. It was Huanhuan. "Sister, Elder Mu, kill those bastards." In his hazy state of consciousness, Lin Dong faintly heard a girl's voice, sharp with the edge of tears, but filled with murderous intent. His awareness faded into darkness. Yet even in the dim void, he could still hear faint, familiar voices. The soft, melodious tones tugged at his mind, making him want to open his eyes and see the face of the person speaking. However, in the end, Lin Dong's exhaustion overwhelmed him, dragging him deeper into unconsciousness. He couldn't summon the strength to open his eyes. The deep fatigue seemed to last an eternity before Lin Dong finally managed to force his eyes open a sliver. Warm sunlight streamed in, and as Lin Dong's eyes adjusted to the light, the brightness drove away the darkness. When he fully opened his eyes, he found himself in a quiet room filled with the faint scent of sandalwood. The rich, reddish hues of the room gave it a steady, imposing atmosphere. Lin Dong stared at the unfamiliar surroundings in momentary confusion. Then, in a flash, he sat up, ready to leap from the bed. But his body immediately gave way, leaving him weak and powerless. The feeling of helplessness from within his body caused Lin Dong's expression to change slightly. However, he quickly calmed himself and furrowed his brows as if recalling something. "Huanhuan must have arrived in time," Lin Dong muttered. He remembered hearing a familiar voice at the last moment, which suggested that the forces of the Dao Sect had arrived just in time. To be injured this badly? Looking down at his pale hands, Lin Dong's brows furrowed even tighter. He could feel the pain radiating throughout his body, and even the flow of his primordial energy was hindered. It was clear that his injuries were severe this time. Of course, Lin Dong didn't dwell on the fact that the opponents he faced were far beyond ordinary. His own strength was only at the 5th Nirvana stage. Even with the abilities of a 4-seal heaven symbol master and various other techniques, managing to contend with an 8th Nirvana stage expert was already a remarkable feat if not for the temporary power surge from consuming 5 immortal essence ancient fruits. There was no way Lin Dong could have stood against Yao Ling, a 9th Nirvana stage powerhouse, much less force him into a severely injured state. The 9th Nirvana stage. In any of the major super sects, a disciple of this level would be considered top tier. In the Eastern Mystery region, such a person would have a notable reputation. For Lin Dong to not only survive Yao Ling's pursuit, but to fight him to a standstill was sure to stir up quite a commotion when the news spread. Lin Dong slowly rose from the bed, though his body was still empty of primordial energy. He would need several days of recovery before he could regain his strength. Creak. He walked across the room and pushed open the door. Warm sunlight spilled in, enveloping Lin Dong's figure. The warmth eased some of the lingering pain in his body. Outside the room was a spacious corridor leading to a tranquil courtyard. In the courtyard sat several figures, and the moment they heard the door open, they quickly turned. Their faces lit up with joy when they saw Lin Dong standing in the doorway. "Lin Dong, you're finally awake?" Lin Dong looked at the smiling faces of Yao Ling and the others as they gathered around. He could see the deep concern and happiness in their eyes, warming his heart. Smiling, he nodded and asked, "How long was I unconscious?" 10 days. Yao Ling spread his hands as he answered. Lin Dong was momentarily stunned. Though he had expected it, he was still surprised that his injuries had caused him to sleep for so long. It seemed the aftereffects of forcefully consuming the 5 immortal essence ancient fruits were far more severe than he anticipated. "You're quite the hero now. Everyone in Dao Sect is talking about you. They say you managed to injure Yao Ling, who's ranked 4th on the sect's wanted list, even though he's a 9th Nirvana stage expert. That guy has been famous in the Eastern Mystery region for a long time," Lu Bai said, clicking his tongue in admiration. His gaze toward Lin Dong was filled with undisguised respect. "And the best part is that Yao Ling used to be a steward for the Yuan sect. You have no idea how much pride this has brought to the disciples of our Dao sect," he added with a smile. Lin Dong looked at the excited, red-faced expressions of Lu Bai and the others and couldn't help but feel a little helpless. He had barely escaped that situation alive. Hardly the way they were making it sound. "Lin Dong, you're awake?" Just as Lin Dong was feeling overwhelmed by their heated discussion, a clear, joyful voice rang out from the courtyard. Everyone's attention shifted, and they saw a young girl standing under the lush green trees. She stood delicately amidst the greenery, her slender figure outlined gracefully under her clothes. Dappled sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting a soft glow on her beautiful, refined face, and her large, bright eyes sparkled with excitement. The girl was undoubtedly stunning. Her black ponytail cascaded down her back, ending in a lively, energetic curl. Yao Ling and the others glanced at the girl, their eyes lighting up before they turned to give Lin Dong knowing looks. "While you were unconscious, junior sister Huanhuan was the one taking care of you most of the time. She came to our wild hall so often that many of the disciples were quite jealous of the attention you were getting," Yao Ling whispered to Lin Dong with a strange smile. Lin Dong blinked in surprise. He was well aware of Huanhuan's popularity among the Dao Sect disciples, and given her background within the sect, he hadn't expected that the girl, who was like a little princess in the sect, would personally take care of him. "Hey, did you fall asleep again?" While Lin Dong was still a bit dazed, Huanhuan had already walked up to him. She raised her delicate, slender hands in front of him and waved them with a light-hearted, musical voice. Lin Dong came back to his senses, looked at the beautiful face in front of him, and smiled. "Thank goodness you arrived in time back then, or I probably wouldn't have made it back. Pfft, always showing off. You were clearly in over your head but still acted so fierce," Huanhuan huffed, pouting. Lin Dong was slightly taken aback by her remark and could only smile wryly. This young lady was truly difficult to please. What other options had he had in that situation? He was lucky to have gotten away alive. "Still, I won't deny that you did look quite dashing at that moment. If you keep it up, who knows, maybe I'll start to like you," she teased with a playful smile upon seeing Lin Dong's exasperated expression. Lin Dong gave a non-committal smile. Once was more than enough. He didn't want to go through that kind of situation a second time. What happened to those guys? Lin Dong suddenly remembered something and asked. "They're all dead. There's no more Demon Seal Legion. Those you marked have all been dealt with," Huanhuan said casually, her long eyelashes fluttering as she spoke. Lin Dong nodded silently. It seemed the Dao Sect had been enraged by the attack, responding with ruthless measures to eliminate the threat. But such decisive action was necessary. Otherwise, the sect's disciples would face endless trouble in the future. The immortal essence ancient seed you brought back made the elders very excited. You played the biggest role in this mission, so once your injuries are fully healed, the sect master will personally see you," Huanhuan added with a smile. "Oh." Lin Dong was genuinely moved by this. Even with his usual composure, hearing those words caused him to feel slightly nervous. After all, The sect master of the Dao Sect was a figure of unparalleled strength in the Eastern Mystery region. His will alone could crush countless dynasties. Yao Ling and the others were also filled with envy. In the Dao Sect, seeing the elusive sect master was no simple task. Don't worry, there's no need to be nervous. You're a hero of the Dao Sect now, Huanhuan reassured him with a smile, noticing Lin Dong's momentary unease. She then pulled a basket from her cosmic bag, filled with various medicinal pills. These are really effective for healing. I spent quite some time in the alchemy room collecting them. These are for external use. Just apply them to your wounds. And these are for internal consumption, she explained in great detail, pointing at the bottles in the basket. As she was explaining, she noticed the odd atmosphere in the room. Looking up, she saw Yao Ling and the others staring at her with strange expressions. Everyone in the Dao Sect knew Huanhuan to be lively and mischievous, always full of energy. But who had ever seen this spirited girl behave so tenderly and attentively? What are you staring at? Haven't you ever seen a beautiful woman? Huanhuan's face flushed red as she glared at them. Yao Ling and the others immediately recoiled, quickly averting their eyes. Humph, you're half a lifesaver, after all. I don't want people saying I'm ungrateful. Take these. She pushed the basket into Lin Dong's hands with a huff and then turned sharply on her heel, striding away with impressive swagger. However, no one noticed that her delicate earlobes had turned red as she walked off. Lin Dong watched her retreating figure, rubbing his nose with a wry smile. It seemed that her gentle demeanor was, indeed, fleeting. Junior sister Huanhuan is something else. I've never seen her take care of someone like that before, Lu Bai remarked with a sly grin. Stop getting any ideas. She's just grateful that I saved her, Lin Dong replied, rolling his eyes. Still, she's been taking care of you all this time. But there's some bad news too. You know how popular she is, right? Some people are definitely not happy with the attention you've been getting. Yao Ling patted Lin Dong's shoulder with a wry smile. I've heard that even Qingyi, the top genius of Earth Hall, second only to senior sister Xiao and all of Dao Sect, has expressed dissatisfaction. So you'd better watch your back. Lin Dong couldn't help but feel a bit exasperated. He wanted to say, how is this my fault? He couldn't believe that even being unconscious could make people resent him. Beauty brings trouble, Yao Ling said with a shrug. I have nothing to do with her. Lin Dong protested. Lin Dong spoke, but as soon as the words left his mouth, he noticed Yao Ling and the others sneaking glances at the basket in his hands, causing him to feel a bit stifled. Inside the quiet room, Lin Dong sat cross-legged on the bed, his eyes closed and his hands forming cultivation seals. A faint, devouring force quietly emanated from his body, causing the surrounding space to ripple. Waves of powerful primordial energy surged forth from the surrounding air, continuously pouring into his body. As the energy flowed in, Lin Dong's aura gradually recovered. This cultivation session lasted for 3 hours. Lin Dong remained motionless until his body trembled slightly and he slowly opened his eyes. A cloud of faint, metallic-smelling white breath escaped from his throat. With the expulsion of that breath, the last trace of dullness on Lin Dong's face disappeared, and his black eyes regained their usual clarity and sharpness. Lin Dong could clearly feel the changes within his body, and a look of delight crossed his face. Ever since he woke up, he had spent nearly 5 days quietly recuperating, finally eliminating the aftereffects of forcefully consuming the 5 immortal essence ancient fruits. Moreover, as his injuries healed and his strength returned, Lin Dong discovered something that filled him with joy. Both his primordial energy and spiritual energy had significantly improved after his near-fatal injuries, to the point where he could faintly sense the threshold of a breakthrough. Could it be the effect of the 5 immortal essence ancient fruits? Lin Dong pondered. The immortal essence ancient fruits were known for their ability to enhance strength. If Lin Dong had refined and consumed them methodically, breaking through to the 6th nirvana stage wouldn't have been out of the question. However, given the dire situation at the time, there was no opportunity for quiet refinement. Instead, he had recklessly devoured the 5 fruits, exchanging them for a temporary surge in power. The downside was that much of the energy from the fruits had been expended during the battle, and Lin Dong had only managed to absorb a small portion, perhaps only a tenth of the total energy. But even that small portion had greatly benefited him. Combined with the life and death battle, Lin Dong's strength had improved once more. Although he hadn't quite broken through, it seemed like a breakthrough wasn't far off. Flexing his arms, which were once again brimming with strength, Lin Dong grinned and then pushed open the door to step outside. As soon as he exited the room, he saw two familiar elderly figures standing not far ahead. He blinked in surprise before hurrying over with a smile. "Greetings, uncles." The two elders before him were none other than Chen Zhen and Wu Dao from the Wild Hall. Seeing the color return to Lin Dong's face, they smiled and nodded in approval. "Are you fully recovered?" Wu Dao asked, his gaze filled with satisfaction. After receiving a nod from Lin Dong, he added with a smile, "You did well this time. You've brought great honor to the Wild Hall. If we can cultivate the immortal essence ancient seed, it'll be a tremendous boon to the entire Dao Sect. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. It was thanks to senior brother Jiang Kuan and the others," Lin Dong replied with a modest smile. "Heh, staying behind to face the Demon Seal Legion on your own was bold, but it was also a bit reckless. You need to be more cautious in the future," Qinjin said, shaking his head. "I will take that to heart," Lin Dong responded with a smile, recognizing the concern behind Chen Zhen's words and not feeling the need to explain further. Chen Zhen nodded slowly, stroking his beard as he gazed at Lin Dong, the satisfaction in his eyes growing more evident. "Let's go. The sect master wants to see you today," Wu Dao said with a smile before leading the way. Lin Dong nodded, and the two elders exchanged a glance before taking off, with Lin Dong following closely behind. The three of them flew straight out of the Wild Hall's mountains, heading deeper into Dao Sect territory. The sect's vast expanse stretched out before them, with mountain ranges extending as far as the eye could see. Disciples occasionally flew across the sky, making the Dao Sect feel like an immense and powerful kingdom. Their flight lasted for more than 10 minutes before the lush forest came to an end, revealing a towering peak that stood majestically in the distance. That is Dao Peak, where the sect master resides. All major decisions for the sect are made there, Wu Dao said in a respectful tone as he glanced at the towering mountain, explaining quietly to Lin Dong. Lin Dong nodded slightly, his gaze sweeping over the mountain. This time, he didn't dare to use his spiritual energy to scan it. His instincts told him that this mountain was exceedingly dangerous enough to obliterate him in an instant. As they approached the peak, Lin Dong's gaze shifted, and he noticed two gray-robed elders seated calmly on an outcropping of rock along the steep mountain wall. Though there were no fluctuations of primordial energy around the elders, and they appeared like frail old men, even Chen Zhen and Wu Dao slowed their pace as they approached. The gray-robed elders lifted their heads, their cloudy eyes glancing at Chen Zhen and Wu Dao before resting on Lin Dong. The moment their gazes locked onto him, every hair on Lin Dong's body stood on end, and even the primordial energy flowing through him seemed to slow. It felt as though these two elders were scanning him from the inside out. Fortunately, the elders' scrutiny lasted only a moment. Lin Dong then saw their stiff, aged faces soften into slightly awkward yet gentle smiles. "He's the one, Lin Dong? Not bad, young man. Go ahead, the sect master is waiting for you." Chen Zhen and Wu Dao nodded respectfully, and with that, the group swiftly headed toward the mountain summit. Those two are elders of the Dao Sect. Their strength is formidable, and they are close to breaking through to the Death Mystique stage, Wu Dao whispered to Lin Dong as they flew. Death Mystique stage, Lin Dong was shocked. At that level, even in the entire Eastern Mystery region, they would be considered top-tier experts. The Dao Sect's deep foundation was indeed terrifying. The three of them ascended to the summit, where a spacious platform made of white jade came into view, shrouded in mist. They landed on the platform. As Lin Dong raised his gaze, he noticed three figures standing not far away. Among the three figures, two women and one man. One of them was familiar. Wearing light-colored clothes that outlined her slender figure, it was none other than Huanhuan. The woman standing to her left was slightly taller, with 3,000 strands of silky black hair casually tied behind her waist. Her face was elegant, and there was a striking resemblance to Huanhuan in her features. However, while Huanhuan was lively and full of energy, this woman exuded a calm and composed demeanor. Lin Dong could sense a faint pressure radiating from the figure before him. He pursed his lips slightly. In the entire Dao Sect, few women possessed such strength. In fact, besides the one person he'd heard about ever since joining the sect but had yet to meet, Heaven Hall's senior sister EngSubs, who else could this be? To Huanhuan's right stood a young man dressed in blue. He had a refined and handsome appearance, not as strikingly beautiful as Xiao Jiao, but still enough to turn heads in any crowd. His presence certainly didn't go unnoticed. "Hey, are your injuries all healed? You've got a tough life, huh?" Huanhuan smiled as she saw Lin Dong and walked over, her voice sweet and teasing. Lin Dong was slightly helpless in the face of her concern, but the genuine happiness in her smile made him chuckle as he replied, "All thanks to your medicines." At this, Huanhuan seemed to remember something, her face reddening slightly. She glanced at Lin Dong briefly before averting her eyes. "You saved me, after all." She then grabbed the wrist of the graceful woman beside her, laughing mischievously. "This is my sister, EngSubs. If you claim you've never heard of her, I'll throw you out right now." "Greetings, senior sister Xiao," Lin Dong said, cupping his fists respectfully. In front of Dao Sect's most outstanding young woman, he didn't dare be careless. By rank, he had to address her as senior sister. This girl has been spoiled. Sometimes her words go too far. Don't take it to heart, EngSubs said softly, her eyes calmly resting on Lin Dong. A faint smile appeared on her otherwise indifferent face. Lin Dong glanced at Huanhuan, who was pouting on the side, and secretly chuckled before nodding. "I owe you for what happened, but you really surprised me." By the time I arrived, Yao Ling had already sustained a fatal injury. EngSubs' gaze shifted slightly as she spoke. Though her expression remained calm, her thoughts were far from tranquil. Having reached the 9th Nirvana stage herself, she knew the power of that realm. Yet when she arrived, Lin Dong had been gravely wounded and unconscious, but Yao Ling was already fatally injured. She found it hard to believe that Lin Dong, with his current strength, could injure someone at the 9th Nirvana stage, especially with so many powerful figures watching. "Just lucky," Lin Dong laughed, inwardly adding, "I was just a bit more ruthless." EngSubs didn't seem to buy Lin Dong's humble response. If mere luck could deal such a blow to someone at the 9th Nirvana stage, then Yao Ling's reputation over the years would be nothing but a joke. At that moment, the young man in blue took a step forward, a charming smile appearing on his handsome face. However, despite his friendly smile, Lin Dong detected a subtle hint of wariness in his eyes. "I've heard much about you, junior brother Lin Dong. Today's meeting confirms the rumors," the young man said, extending his hand towards Lin Dong. Due to the angle, it seemed as though he was looking down slightly at Lin Dong, and he added with a smile, "I'm Qingyi of Earth Hall, Huanhuan's childhood friend." Earth Hall's Qingyi. The young man's words made Lin Dong pause for a moment before he smirked inwardly, understanding the source of Qingyi's earlier wariness. It seemed this man harbored feelings for Huanhuan. However, it appeared he had misunderstood the situation. Lin Dong wasn't particularly surprised that Huanhuan had many admirers. Compared to EngSubs' calm and reserved nature, Huanhuan's lively and energetic personality was more appealing. Many disciples didn't even dare raise their voices in front of EngSubs, but in front of Huanhuan, they could relax a bit. Her easygoing attitude made her hard not to like. "What nonsense are you spouting now?" Huanhuan frowned slightly, glaring at Qingyi in annoyance. "Keep talking like that, and I'll throw you out." Qingyi merely smiled and shrugged at Lin Dong, his silence further emphasizing the close relationship between him and Huanhuan. Lin Dong rubbed his nose and smiled. Qingyi's subtle games weren't hard to see through, and it would indeed stir doubts in someone who had feelings for Huanhuan. "In about half a month, it seems the Great Wilderness Monument will open, correct?" Qingyi said with a smile as he looked at Lin Dong. The words, Great Wilderness Monument, caused even EngSubs' eyes to ripple slightly. In the past, she had meditated before the monument for months, Yet she still hadn't been able to comprehend the great wilderness scripture within. Lin Dong's gaze also shifted toward Qingyi as he nodded. Heh, of the 4 halls in Dao Sect, disciples from 3 have already mastered their respective mystical scriptures. This time, junior brother Lin Dong has the best chance of mastering the great wilderness scripture on behalf of Wild Hall. I've long heard of the great wilderness scripture's might. I hope junior brother Lin Dong can comprehend it this time. I'd love to see how it compares to Earth Hall's heavenly sovereign scripture. Lin Dong frowned slightly at Qingyi's words. He could sense a subtle arrogance hidden within them. Of course, if Qingyi had truly mastered the heavenly sovereign scripture, he had every right to be proud. Still, Lin Dong felt as though Qingyi was trying to stir things up, perhaps due to his feelings for Huanhuan. Senior brother Qingyi overestimates me. As for the great wilderness scripture, if it's mine, then so be it. If not, I won't force it. All I can do is give it my best, Lin Dong replied indifferently, not interested in engaging further. Hey, show some confidence. I'm rooting for you, Huanhuan said with a playful smile as she patted Lin Dong's shoulder in encouragement. Looking at her lively, youthful face, Lin Dong couldn't help but smile wryly. When I was confident before, you said I was too boastful. Now that I'm being humble, you say this? Hearing this, Huanhuan's face flushed slightly. She muttered, well, I didn't know you back then. Now I think you've got potential. You've got a real shot at comprehending the great wilderness scripture. After a pause, she added, but even if you fail, it's no big deal. Not even my sister could comprehend it, so it's nothing to be ashamed of. It was clear that, although Huanhuan had come to understand Lin Dong better, she still wasn't fully confident in his ability to comprehend the great wilderness scripture. After all, the requirements of that scripture were notoriously harsh and demanding. However, before Huanhuan could finish speaking, her head was gently tapped by EngSubs. She turned and cast a pitiful glance at her sister, who chuckled and said, it's one thing to comfort someone, but using me as a bad example? That's bold. Watching this scene unfold, Lin Dong couldn't help but smile. His gaze shifted to Qingyi, whose smile had dimmed slightly due to Huanhuan's words of comfort toward Lin Dong. Still, Qingyi maintained a relaxed demeanor, though the wariness in his eyes toward Lin Dong had clearly deepened. Junior brother Lin Dong, you should go in. The sect leader is waiting for you, EngSubs said, patting her sister's shoulder before turning her attention to Lin Dong. Lin Dong nodded in response, lifting his head to gaze at the grand hall before him. Taking a deep breath, he steeled his expression and stepped forward, pushing open the heavy doors and entering under the watchful eyes of Huanhuan and the others. He's quite impressive. Wild Hall picked up a real talent this time. He might be a dark horse in this year's hall trials, EngSubs commented quietly as she watched Lin Dong disappear behind the doors. Yeah, Lin Dong is really strong. He managed to seriously injure Yao Ling despite only being at the 5th Nirvana stage. No wonder he seemed so cocky when I first met him. Turns out he had the skills to back it up. Huanhuan nodded in agreement. It was clear that, after the incident with the Immortal Essence Ancient Seed, her opinion of Lin Dong had significantly improved. I heard from the elders that he only managed to hold his own against Yao Ling and the others because he consumed 5 Immortal Essence Ancient fruits from the Immortal Essence Ancient tree. Otherwise, Qingyi interjected with a dismissive smirk, clearly unimpressed by the praise being heaped on Lin Dong. Consumed 5 Immortal Essence Ancient fruits? EngSubs' eyes narrowed as she turned to Qingyi and asked, would you dare? Qingyi froze under the twin sisters' bright gazes. He wanted to puff up his chest and appear bold, but in the end, he couldn't bring himself to lie. With a slightly awkward shrug, he admitted, not really, but if it were a life-or-death situation, I might try. Lin Dong came out of the 100 Dynasty War. You've probably heard how brutal that place is. He's from a lower dynasty, so to fight his way out of there with such a humble background, you can't imagine the sacrifices he had to make, EngSubs said softly, her eyes resting on the slowly closing doors of the hall. But fortunately, he's now one of Dao Sect's disciples. Huanhuan was surprised by her sister's high praise for Lin Dong, as EngSubs was usually quite reserved with her compliments. No matter how talented he is, he joined the sect late. It won't be easy for him to dramatically raise Wild Hall's ranking in the upcoming hall trials, Qingyi remarked with a faint smile. EngShao didn't respond to this, instead pulling Ying Huanhuan along as they turned to leave. Qingyi watched the two sisters walk away, pursing his lips slightly. He then glanced back at the now closed doors of the hall, a trace of darkness flickering in his eyes. Inside the hall, there was no opulent grandeur. Lin Dong stepped inside and found a narrow path of scattered stones stretching forward. On either side of the path, clear ponds reflected the soft light, with a light mist swirling gently above the water's surface. Occasionally, the surface rippled as if something was moving beneath. Lin Dong followed the path until he stopped in front of a small lake. In the center of the lake floated a single green lotus leaf, and on that leaf sat a figure, motionless like a meditating monk. The aura of serenity around him was so profound that it seemed to stabilize the very space itself. Lin Dong's gaze sharpened as soon as he saw the figure on the lotus leaf. Instantly, a deep solemnity overtook him. He could feel the mysterious stone talisman, ancient cosmic formation, and devouring ancestral talisman within his body all retracting their energy beyond his control. The only other time he had experienced this sensation was when he encountered Qingji in the ancient space. Now, it was happening again. Disciple Lin Dong greets the sect leader, Lin Dong said, bowing deeply and respectfully. As Lin Dong's voice echoed through the hall, the figure on the lotus leaf slowly opened his eyes. In that moment, Lin Dong felt his consciousness waver, as though the eyes before him contained the sun and moon. The figure stood up from the lotus leaf and walked across the lake toward Lin Dong. When he stopped in front of Lin Dong, the young disciple finally saw the Dao Sect leader clearly. He wore simple cloth shoes and a plain white robe that fit him well. He appeared to be in his 30s or 40s, with a face as smooth as jade. It was clear that in his youth, he had been exceptionally handsome. The sect leader wore a gentle smile on his face, a smile that seemed as vast as the starry sky, calming any unrest in the heart of those who beheld it. Cloth shoes, white robes, unfathomable depths. That was Lin Dong's first impression of the Dao Sect leader. When facing others like Chen Zhen or Wu Dao, Lin Dong could still get a sense of their presence. But in front of this man, he felt nothing. It was as if he were gazing into an infinite ocean, one that would swallow him if he tried to probe too deeply. Young one, you've done a great service for our Dao Sect, the sect leader said with a smile, pausing before continuing, and thank you for saving Huanhuan. Lin Dong's heart trembled. From the sect leader's words, he had just learned something unexpected. He couldn't help but grin wryly. He had always suspected that Ying Huanhuan's background was significant, but now it was confirmed. At that moment, I couldn't let a girl face danger alone. Honestly, it was a bit of a rash decision. Suppressing the shock in his heart, Lin Dong responded with complete honesty. Given his usual cautious nature, he would never voluntarily throw himself into a life-or-death situation. That day, however, his blood had boiled. Perhaps it was because, years ago, he had been saved by Ling Qingzhu in the Great Yin dynasty. Since then, he disliked being in situations where a woman had to save him again. After all, what kind of man constantly needed saving by women? Lin Dong's words made the Dao Sect leader pause for a moment, before he chuckled softly and nodded, looking at Lin Dong with a warm gaze. No wonder you received the Azure Dragon King Qingji's legacy. Lin Dong was taken aback. He hadn't expected the Dao Sect leader to know of Qingji, a name from ancient times. Heh, are you surprised? Young one, I know you have many secrets. For example, the heavenly dragon aura within your body, the sky-transforming dragon art, and the sect leader's smile deepened. The devouring ancestral talisman. When those final words reached Lin Dong's ears, his pupils suddenly contracted sharply.